Hello. Today I want to talk about living with paranoid schizophrenia and CPTSD. Living with schizophrenia, as did my mother, inspired me to write my novel, The Overlife, A Tale of Schizophrenia. And trauma from my childhood has left me with CPTSD. My CPTSD helped to motivate the writing of my novel, Three Kidnapped, Three Siblings, Three Furies. I have spoken a lot about my schizophrenia on my website blog and during my first podcast series, Schizophrenia as I Live It. Here to refresh, let me summarize key features of paranoid schizophrenia. Paranoia, a pervasive suspicion and distrust, often believing others are trying to harm them. Delusions, false beliefs that are firmly held despite evidence to the contrary, often involving themes of persecution, grandiosity, or jealousy. Hallucinations, sensory experiences that seem real but are not, most commonly auditory hallucinations like hearing voices. I myself also have visual hallucinations during a relapse. Cognitive functioning. Individuals with paranoid schizophrenia generally maintain relatively normal cognitive abilities and emotional responses compared to other types of schizophrenia, with delusions and hallucinations being the most prominent symptoms. While this may be generally true, my cognitive functioning takes a hit during a relapse. This summary is rough in that people with schizophrenia may experience some symptoms more than others and not all these symptoms at once. In the episode description, I will remind you of E. Fullatori's outstanding reference on schizophrenia. What is CPTSD? It stands for Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, a mental health condition that develops after experiencing prolonged or repeated trauma, often involving abuse or neglect. Therefore, it relates to my childhood experiences, as I discussed in my previous podcast, Sibling Abuse and the Greek Myths. I suffered abuse as a child, including sibling abuse. It's closely related to PTSD, but PTSD is typically associated with a single traumatic event or several traumatic events over a shorter period. In contrast, CPTSD is often associated with chronic or ongoing trauma, such as child abuse, as already mentioned, or domestic violence. What are its symptoms? Like the case of schizophrenia, the way CPTSD reveals itself varies from person to person. But here is a list of well-recognized symptoms. Irregular emotions, difficulty managing emotions, including intense mood swings, difficulty controlling anger, and feeling overwhelmed by emotions. Negative self-perception, feelings of worthlessness, shame, guilt, and a negative view of oneself. Relationship difficulties, challenges in forming and maintaining healthy relationships due to trust issues, difficulty with intimacy, and fear of abandonment. Dissociation, feeling detached from oneself, one's body, or the world around them. Disturbances in self-organization. This symptom includes difficulties with emotional regulation, negative self-view, and interpersonal challenges. As with the list of typical symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia, the above summary of the effects of CPTSD may not fit precisely with everyone with CPTSD. We are all different, but that doesn't necessarily make either the symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia or of CPTSD less intense for one as opposed to another. In my podcast, Schizophrenia as I Live It, and my book, The Overlife, I have shown at length how I live my schizophrenia and how my mother lived hers most differently. In my previous podcast episode entitled Sibling Abuse and the Greek Myths, I described some of the origins of my CPTSD. What causes CPTSD? I'll give some examples. Childhood emotional neglect, witnessing frequent violence and abuse, growing up in poverty or unsafe living environments, frequent exposure to substance use in childhood, and growing up with a parent with a severe mental illness. If you have been following my podcasts, as well as the contents of my 2 novels, The Overlife and 3 Siblings, you'll understand that I live with schizophrenia and CPTSD. What I want to convey today is that my schizophrenia and my CPTSD interact extremely strongly when I have a relapse of my schizophrenia. The CPTSD makes the symptoms of my schizophrenia much more challenging to handle. What do I mean by this messy mix? It's best to provide examples. When I am sick with schizophrenia, I do feel persecuted. At its extreme, this symptom convinces me that everyone but my spouse wants me to commit suicide. That includes my brother. My mother and father are no longer alive. My wise spouse insisted 20 years ago that I completely break with my brother after witnessing how he treated me, and after I received a diagnosis of CPTSD from childhood experiences from a well-known doctor. Initially, I felt guilty about making the break, but now I recognize it as the right choice. By the way, my brother has gone on to be happy, wealthy, and has children and grandchildren. From his perspective, he doesn't want his children associated with me because of my schizophrenia. My brother and his wife indulge in all the common stigmas, even though my brother grew up with a mother he loved who lived with schizophrenia. Despite the solution to keep my brother and me apart, he is still present when I am ill with schizophrenia and not stabilized. This condition can arise due to stress or the need to adjust my medication dosage. I feel I am being persecuted, and I believe, despite the break with him, that my brother is one of the main people judging my past and agreeing that I should be put to death. Even though my father is no longer alive, his violent episodes with me in my childhood come to mind when my schizophrenia is relapsing, and I am afraid of him as if he were still able to hurt me. Despite my extreme fear of schizophrenia with PTSD, I am never violent and now understand that this is a concern for me and my doctors. My spouse is always supportive, which helps enormously. I have only given a few examples of what happens when my schizophrenia and CPTSD combine. I feel that's enough for today. In particular, I find it hard to talk about these subjects. That's why I have an excellent psychologist and an equally excellent psychiatrist. I am fortunate that I at least have a diagnosis. Others live with the side effects of schizophrenia and CPTSD without knowing why. It's my goal to be frank about my life so others can see that my confessions do not harm me or anyone else, but may lead to much-needed solutions for people suffering from mental health problems. Thank you for listening if you're listening to the audio version, or watching if you're watching this on YouTube.